Ranger Cole Jackson pushed through the pre-dawn hush of Bitterroot National Forest, the air biting at his cheeks as he climbed from the cab of his truck. A pale ribbon of frost glazed the winding road behind him, and the only sound was the muted hum of his radio, lifeline to the world beyond the pines. He slung his pack over one shoulder, its straps whispering against his jacket, and stepped onto the hidden trail, the forest swallowing his silhouette in a quiet embrace. He had done this routine countless times. Check the trail cameras, inspect the paths, return before the light faded. But that morning, the forest seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for something extraordinary to unfold. His boots found the soft bed of pine needles, the occasional crack of a twig, underfoot echoing like a whispered secret. The canopy above rippled with the faint rustle of wind, and shafts of grey light sifted through the branches, illuminating motes of dust drifting in the stillness. Cole moved with practiced ease, confident in every footfall, until a hidden patch of ice erupted beneath his boot. Time slowed as he pitched forward, arms pinwheeling in the cold air. His world became a blur of snapped branches and jagged rocks until he landed with a muted crash, pain searing through shoulder and skull. The radio slid from his pocket to the ground, its signal dying in the cushion of moss and gravel. Darkness claimed him before he could cry out for help, leaving him suspended between consciousness and the forest's silent vigil. When dawn's first light fractured the trees, Officer Dana Miller led the search party onto Trail 17, hearts hammering with hope and dread. Cole lay where he fell, uniform shredded, skin drained of colour, his breathing shallow. Around him stood half a dozen grizzly bears, their great bodies arranged in a solemn semicircle. Each beast exhaled visible clouds of steam into the chilly air, and for a moment Dana thought she had stumbled into a dream. One bear, older than the rest, muzzle flecked with silver, stepped close and lowered its massive head in what looked like watchful concern, rather than aggression. Kuri said. No snarls, no raised claws, just the soft, rhythmic rumble of their breath. How could these wild creatures choose to guard him instead of tearing him apart? Dana's hand hovered over her holster as she traded her training for astonishment. The cubs at the edge of the circle, their coats dappling the ground like living shadows, inched forward, tentative and curious. The forest itself seemed to exhale, its ancient pines bowing under the weight of the moment. They're protecting him, Dana whispered, her voice hushed in reverence. The words fell like a benediction, awakening in her a mix of fear and gratitude so profound it stilled her pulse. As the morning sun climbed higher, the bears dispersed like mist, leaving only paw prints and the echo of something primal and compassionate that defied every lesson she'd ever learned. She'd ever learned. Cole's eyes fluttered open to the sterile white of a ranger station cot, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A haze of pain and confusion clouded his mind. The last thing he remembered was cold air and the sickening crack of his fall. But then came warmth, a weight pressing gently against his side, steadying his heartbeat. He blinked at Dana's relieved face hovering in the doorway. They surrounded you, she said softly. They didn't harm you. He stared at her, searching for the logic in those words, but found only wonder. Hours later, grainy footage from a trail camera spread across every ranger's inbox and beyond, igniting a wildfire of headlines. Miracle on Trail 17. Bears as guardians. The day the wild grew a heart. Experts dismissed it as chance or misinterpretation, but for those who witnessed it, something fundamental had shifted. Alone that night in the observation post, Dana hovered over the security monitor, replaying the circle of bears again and again. 5 massive animals, none threatening, all watchful. She had spent 10 years in the field learning when to fear and when to respect, but nothing in her training prepared her for this. No textbook described bears kneeling in silent vigil or choosing compassion over carnage. Over carnage. The forest pulsed around her like a living entity, history and instinct converging in that frozen tableau. She dimmed the screen and closed her eyes, unable to reconcile the wild she knew with the wild she had just seen. Cole's recovery was marked by stitches along his right shoulder, bruises blooming across his side, and a roadmap of memory gaps. He stared at his hands as though greeting distant relatives. In the haze of painkillers and trauma, he recalled only fleeting impressions. The softness of fur brushing his arm, the warmth of breath against his ear, the steadying presence that had crept beside him in the dark. When Dana described what they'd found, he nodded, bewildered by a miracle he'd almost slept through. Orders came from the Montana Wildlife Authority. Give a statement. Undergo evaluation. Stay off high-risk trails. Wonder. But Cole's heart had been claimed by the forest, and he could not turn away from the bond forged in silence beneath the pines. 3 weeks later, before dawn, he slipped out alone, the warning sign at the trailhead, mocking protocol. One stable trail, no access. It read, bright yellow against aged wood. Ignoring it, he hiked to the bend where his boot had first betrayed him. There, carved into soft birch bark, were 3 long claw marks. Too clean, too deliberate to be accident. They faced inward, a quiet invitation. Cole's breath caught as he traced their rough edges with his fingertips, the skin beneath tingling with recognition. He glanced uphill and froze. A young bear, now nearly grown, stood watching him. No growl, no rush, just unblinking eyes that mirrored his own mixture of caution and longing. Caution and longing. Words failed him. He knelt on the frozen earth and placed a granola bar on a flat rock, offering sustenance and trust in one gesture. Then he stepped back, heart drumming in silence. The cub tilted its head, breath frosting the air, deliberating. And for a heartbeat, a hush settled over the forest, as though time itself had paused to witness the exchange. The bear sniffed once, then turned and melted into the trees, leaving Cole with a question he could not yet answer. Had he been invited back? Or simply remembered? In the days that followed, Cole brought another offering. No food this time, but a leather pouch tied with a strip of sinew. Inside lay a small bell, once part of a cub's collar, rescued from poachers, but lost in the wild years ago. He laid the pouch beside the birch claw marks and retreated into the trees, waiting. Hours passed. The pouch remained undisturbed until he returned at dusk to find it moved slightly, nestled amid a neat circle of pine cones. Note: the language of ritual needed no translation. Each cone spoke of presence, memory, and a bond woven between 2 species. Cole's clandestine visits became ritual. He never spoke of them, not even to Dana. Sometimes he found the pouch untouched, other times surrounded by stones arranged in concentric arcs. Always the forest watched. On his 5th visit, 2 shadows drifted between the trunks. First the cub, then her mother, scarred muzzle, silvered by age. They stood just beyond the boundary of his vision, silent observers of his devotion. Neither bear moved toward him, but their stillness spoke volumes. Acknowledgement, approval, an unspoken covenant. Aidweed. Word leaked to Dr. Nolan Reeves, a young wildlife biologist, chasing the tail of emergent empathy in apex predators. One Tuesday morning, Reeves stepped into the clearing unannounced, camera poised. Cole's warning to leave hung in the air, but Reeves clicked anyway. The bears froze, the mother aligning herself protectively between cub and strangers. Cole positioned himself defensively. Voice low, we came to return, not to take. Reeves's lens shuttered once, twice, proof of a choice that would upend scientific orthodoxy. That night, he sat by Cole's fire, 3 perfect images on his card. But as the wind whispered through the pines, Reeves slid the card into the flames, his silence louder than any publication. Some truths, they agreed, belonged to the wild alone. Storm clouds gathered in the mountains, low thunder rolling like distant drums. The thawed snow swelled rivers into rage, and Trail 17's crossings turned treacherous. Cole strapped on boots, slung rope over his shoulder, and set out without radio or gun. Only instinct and purpose. From an overlook above Miner's Hollow Creek, he spotted her caught in the whitewater's grip. The cub, limbs tangled around a fallen log, small body, spinning helplessly. Fear froze him for a heartbeat. Then he slid down the muddy bank, rope trailing like a lifeline. Lace-laced water slammed him as he entered the torrent, each breath a fight, each stroke fueled by urgency. He reached her just as the current threatened to pull them both beneath the surface. One arm looped beneath her chest, the other held the rope taut. You don't go under today, he roared against the water's roar. Inch by inch, they surged toward shore, bodies battered but alive. Collapsed on the riverbank, man and bear, lay spent, soaked to the bone. When Cole looked up, the matriarch stood on the slope above, rain streaming down her face, eyes glimmering with fierce approval. No triumph in her stance, only recognition that this time, he had chosen to save, and they had chosen to trust. Cole spent that night at the ranger outpost, the cub curled on the doorstep, under the awning rather than inside. In the glow of the oil lamp, he watched her sleep, breathing steady, chest rising and falling like a lullaby. When dawn broke, she rose, lingered in the threshold, then turned and walked back into the forest, free and unharmed. Cole felt the last vestiges of his old life slip away, This bond, forged in peril and compassion, had changed him irrevocably. Summer arrived late, melting the final snow in a single afternoon. Cole walked the reopened trails one last time, not as a ranger on duty, but as a pilgrim bidding farewell to a world he once commanded. He filed his resignation quietly weeks before, badge waiting on the desk, beside his helmet. Soulmate. Townsfolk whispered about his transformation. Some thought he'd gone mad. Others believed he'd found true purpose. He did not correct them, for the truth belonged to the trees. On his final morning, he lingered at the flat stone beneath the claw-marked birch. 12 riverstones formed a perfect circle around a pine cone split open to reveal its seeds. In their midst lay his badge, placed with deliberate care. He stepped back, breath catching as the forest exhaled around him. From the shadows emerged the matriarch, older now, fur lightened at the muzzle. She watched him without fear or aggression, eyes soft with understanding. Cole knelt before her and whispered, "A thank you." The bear blinked once, then slipped silently into the woods, leaving the circle undisturbed. Cole drove away from Madison Pines with only a journal and the leather pouch tied to his belt. He never looked back. In his chest he carried something no one else could see. A covenant of compassion written in claw and bark. A bond that transcended fear. He wrote in his journal that night, "Oh, Wild knew me better than most people ever did. I was never lost. I was never alone. I was surrounded. And I was chosen." And so he left, bearing a story not for headlines, but for the quiet places where hearts listen to the whisper of the forest and discover that sometimes the wild chooses to save.